In the banquet room, the politicians are still waiting for Dewey Roberts, while Dewey continues reminiscing with Nora Trinell.
When Mr. Hopkins left town so unexpectedly, it certainly gave Auburn a scandal to talk about, Miss Trinell.
Oh, yes. Mr. Steele's secretary had overheard just enough of his conversation with Dan to start a torrent of malicious gossip. And the story of Dan's leaving town because of an affair he was having with a girl named Mabel, well, it had so many seemingly authentic points that even I almost believed it. Until you came to my schoolroom one afternoon. Come in.
I waited until after school to bring you this, Miss Trinell. I think it's the best boat model I ever made.
Well, thank you, Dewey. It's lovely.
Do you recognize the Mabel?
Mabel?
Yeah, I copied it from the picture postcards you sent me. Your card was perfect for the beam, and I got the side view for Mr. Hopkins' picture.
Mr. Hopkins' picture?
Yeah, he sent me a picture of the Mabel, too.
The Mabel! Why, of course, Dewey, it was the Mabel, wasn't it?
Huh?
Oh, Dewey. Dewey, did you show these picture postcards to anyone?
Only Mr. Steele.
Only Mr. Steele.
He has to borrow them.
Oh, thank you, Dewey. You're a darling. I'll keep the Mabel always.
Is this a night letter, Miss Trinell?
No. Full rate telegram.
You got more than 10 words, you know. Night letter'll get there first thing in the morning.
Dan drives fast.
Mr. Dan Hopkins, Engineers Club, Chicago, Illinois. Dan, my darling, you are such a dear, gallant fool. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, Nora. You could cut out this last love you. You've already said it 3 times, you know. Love Nora means the same thing as I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you.
No, send it just as it is, please. You see, it's a secret code.
Oh, say.
Mr. Hopkins got some sort of an engineering job with a Chicago firm after he left Auburn, didn't he, Miss Trinell?
Yes, Dewey. We were going to be married the next June as soon as school was out. Dan's company was sending him to Honduras, and the trip was going to be our honeymoon. But on the day before Christmas, 1916, Dan returned to Auburn unexpectedly as Lieutenant Hopkins of the Royal Canadian Engineers.
Nora?
Darling! Oh, darling, what are you doing in that uniform?
Well, I expect to do my bit.
Oh, I knew something would happen. Everything was too perfect to last.
Oh, darling, have a little confidence in me. Why, with me in this war, it'll be over in 6 months. It'll have to be. I have a very important date in June. Now, don't cry, darling.
No, I won't.
Now, look, I have 2 whole weeks before I have to report.
2 weeks?
2 whole weeks.
Dan, will you marry me right now?
Why, Miss Trinell, this is so sudden.
And for our honeymoon, we'll go to the same resort where we spent our vacation.
Well, after 10 hours, what's your opinion of marriage, Mrs. Hopkins?
I think no family should be without one.
Reactionary.
Yeah.
You know, I've come to the conclusion that we're 2 of the nicest people I ever knew.
Oh, you may be, but I'm not.
Well, I won't argue with you. Anyway, you're beautiful.
No, definitely not. That's just your male ego. A woman thinks his wife has to be beautiful because he picked her.
I still say you're beautiful.
No, if anybody in our family is beautiful, darling, it's you.
You think so?
Yes.
Well, if you insist. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Oh, darling, I love you so. I'm going to be so terribly, terribly lonesome. Stop the world, Dan. Please stop the world. It stopped. Thank you, dear.
It can't stand still indefinitely, Nora.
No, I know I can't, but let's try to forget it. There's so much I still have to know about you. Oh, all the things that happened to you when you were a child.
Oh, There was nothing unusual. Mumps, measles. Say, I thought I told you weren't to cry.
I'm not crying, darling. Oh, I'm so sorry, darling. I wanted to be brave and gay and amusing to make it easy for you to leave when our time was up, but I can't. I'm selfish. You've given me the world, Dan, and I want to keep it.
Keep it from me, too, dear.
Dan, I don't want you to go away.
You wouldn't want me not to go.
No, of course I wouldn't, but... Am I enjoying my misery, darling?
You're braver than I am.
No, I'm not. I'm frightened. I'm frightened at the thought of being alone. Well, I suppose in the end we all have to stand alone.
You won't be alone. I'll be back. You can bank on that. I'll always be with you.
Of course you will.
Say, why should we waste our honeymoon worrying about my going to France?
Yes, it does seem silly, doesn't it? After all, it's the only honeymoon we'll ever have.
Oh, you're wrong there, Mrs. Hopkins. As soon as this war's over, we're going to start on a honeymoon that'll last us the rest of our lives.
Oh, I'm sure of that, Dan. Those 2 weeks that Dan and I had together were glorious, Dewey. But they ended too soon. We went back to Auburn, but almost before we knew it, the day for Dan's departure arrived. He didn't want me to go to the station with him for fear we'd cry. So I kissed him goodbye and walked over to your house. You'd been acting strangely from the time Dan returned to Auburn, and though I didn't connect the two, I was anxious to learn what was wrong with my favorite pupil.
I was just lovesick. I remember Steve Hill and I had quite a battle when Steve said Mr. Hopkins had been forced to resign from school and leave town because he'd gotten into some sort of a mix-up with you. Then when I walked into your classroom one afternoon and saw you kissing Mr. Hopkins, the only thing I could think of was to leave town and go to another school.
Yes, I remember. You were packing when I reached your house, and your mother directed me to your room. May I come in, Dewey?
Can if you want to.
Oh, how wonderful, Dewey. You're first, aren't they?
They're just long pants, that's all.
I wouldn't let you go away without saying goodbye. Weren't you coming to say goodbye to me?
Nope.
Dewey, what's happened?
What's happened to what?
To our old friendship.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But if you don't want to tell me, it's quite all right. Goodbye, Dewey. I wanted to wish you luck. So much luck.
Great guns, you don't have to be nice to me. Go ahead and laugh at me.
I'm not laughing, Dewey.
Anyway, you can tell him and have a lot of fun.
Dewey, my grandfather, the ship's captain that I've told you so much about, he used to say that when you run afoul dirty weather and there's the chance that you may founder, spill your cargo. It's the ship that counts.
Well, I couldn't help it. The fellas were talking about you and Mr. Hopkins. That's what I fought Steve Hill about.
Oh.
Then I went up to your classroom to tell you I was sorry. And I saw him kissing you.
Oh, Dewey, so that's it. I wonder what I should tell you. I'd like you to understand.
You don't have to tell me anything.
The way you're feeling now will pass, Dewey, believe me. I know how awful it is when people and things disappoint you. It hurts. It hurts to find out the people you love are not stars, but just human beings made of flesh and blood. And that's the way people are, and those are the things that we learn as we grow up. I love Mr. Hopkins, and he loves me. But, Dewey, my love for him hasn't changed my affection for you. Oh, it's hard to grow up, but you mustn't let anything or anyone throw you off your course, because, you see, in the end, Dewey, you'll have to stand by yourself anyway.
Gee, Miss Tremell, don't cry. Because if you cry, I'll cry.
I'm trying awfully hard not to, Dewey. You know something? I'll tell you a secret. Each year, there's someone in the class who stands out. Someone whom the teacher counts on and loves as though that child were her own. You're one of those few, Dewey. So you mustn't let me down. Will you remember that?
Yes'm.
And you'll remember me, too, a little?
Of course, Miss Trinnell. Miss Trinnell, would you come to the station with me?
Oh, no, I couldn't do that. Mr. Hopkins is leaving on that train.
Oh, please, just sort of be there to wave. That way I could never forget.
Well, all right, Dewey, I'll be there.